Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to, day 3 of the second edition of day 1. Being a number person, which is quite normal for a finance minister, I will try to answer a fairly simple question, which is how can a 2 square kilometer country help change the world? A simple answer, at least the one that comes to my mind today, is through leadership. Leadership by example, and what is sometimes referred to as soft power. The best embodiment of which is obviously our sovereign, Prince Albert II, His Serene Highness, who for decades has been at the forefront of the fight against climate change and for sustainable development. This is what he has achieved and what he continues to achieve at a strategic level, a political level. But how can a small country such as Monaco achieve similar results at the economic or the financial level? Well, what you may not be aware of is that Monaco may be one of the very few countries in the world with no debt, no public deficit, and a reserve fund which was built over decades only thanks to sound management of public finances. Indeed, when we have excess money, when the state has a surplus, a budget surplus, that surplus gets invested in a reserve fund. And the idea is to deploy means through this reserve fund to achieve good outside the boundaries of our small country. Before being finance minister, I worked in the financial industry in various countries for about 20 years. And I remember those were years of exclusion. I had clients, institutional investors, asking me to help them design portfolios which didn't invest in some specific countries or sectors or companies. Tobacco, gambling, those were sectors that, for whatever reason, investors wanted to avoid. And there were others, and countries as well. But the world is constantly changing, and we moved somewhat from excluding to trying to be more inclusive. For instance, supporting minorities, supporting the access of women to corporate boardrooms. And those were the early days of what is now referred to as sustainable investment, impact investment, or using an acronym ESG, environment, social, and governance issues. But I had the feeling a few years ago that exclusion, again somewhat knocked at the door. When managing our reserve fund, I heard people say 3%, 5%, 7%. And what if it doesn't perform well? At the end of the day, I don't think this is the issue. People in this room, those who I had the pleasure to listen to yesterday and those who are speaking today, are pioneers. And they don't really know what the future means. They don't really know what's next. But what they believe strongly in is that they can help change the world. They can help shape a new world. And that can also be done through finance. And so I told the teams managing the reserve fund, I don't want a little box, a few percentage points that we would invest in that kind of strategies. I want this to be looked at in a completely transversal way, where we can say, whatever the country, whatever the stock, whatever the market, whatever the asset class we invest in, we can help change the world. By being inclusive, we can help corporate managers, finance directors, CEO, turn their business into something which is greener, cleaner, more sustainable, better for the planet. And we now have metrics in the fund showing us, for instance, how many gallons of water can be saved through our investments, how many tons of CO2 won't be emitted because of our investment, thanks to our investment. We know how many cars we can take off the road. One day we may know also how many children we send to school, sent to those important investments we make through our reserve fund outside our little country. And so if I had to conclude, again, using numbers and examples, it's beyond those boundaries. We can shape the future. We can demultiply the money we invest within our boundaries, leading by example, following in the footsteps of our sovereign, who's, again, at the UN a few weeks ago, committed to dates and objectives in terms of carbon neutrality, in terms of reducing emissions for the Principality. But given our size, we have to look beyond. We have to be a model outside the frontiers of our country. And we can do it with finance. We can do it with investment. And this is what I wanted to share with you today. I wish you a very fruitful conference, and I look forward to seeing you again next year in Monaco. Thank you.